All right, let's dive into a question that's both eerie and fascinating. Can the demons of the warp actually hear our thoughts? It's a question that touches on the heart of what makes the warp so terrifying. The idea that our most secret desires, our hidden fears, and even our fleeting thoughts might be laid bare to the monstrous entities lurking in the depths of the Imperium is one that both chills the spine and sparks the imagination. These demons, born from the very essence of the warp itself, are creatures of immense power and unfathomable malevolence. But what if their powers extend beyond the physical realm? What if they can reach into our minds, invading the very thoughts we believe are private, unnoticed? In Warhammer 40K, the warp isn't just a chaotic sea of raw psychic energy. It's a realm of consciousness, a place where emotion, thought, and essence are woven into the fabric of reality. To consider whether demons can hear our thoughts isn't just a question of their abilities. It's a reflection of how fragile the boundary between our minds and the warp truly is. So, as we unravel this mystery, let's look at what makes demons so potent, how they relate to the warp, and whether or not our minds might just be one more thing they can dominate. The warp, as it exists in the Warhammer 40K universe, is not merely a dimension. It is a boundless, ever-changing realm of raw psychic energy, a mirror of the emotions, thoughts, and desires of all sentient beings. This chaotic expanse is what gives the universe its deepest, most terrifying layer. It's where all manner of horrors and creatures dwell, but it's not just a void. It is alive in its own right, pulsing with the emotions of every living creature across the galaxy. When you try to picture the warp, it's difficult to do so with the mind's eye. It's not a place we can physically navigate in any way that makes sense in our three-dimensional reality. It's not just some abstract space, but an area where time and space collapse and are shaped by the emotions of those who enter it. The warp is fluid, formless, and constantly in flux. The rules we take for granted in the material universe don't apply here, and this makes it a paradox, a place that both defies and embraces the natural laws of the universe. Some say the warp is like an ocean, vast and unknowable, its surface an endless swirl of churning colors, while below, in the deepest recesses, unspeakable horrors lurk. But rather than being silent, the warp is full of sound, voices of the damned, screams of the lost, whispers of the gods themselves. There is no true silence here, and it is in this tumultuous backdrop that demons are born. They are creatures of the warp, their existence tied to the energy that fuels it. This energy isn't passive, far from it. It's driven by the emotions of the living, a swirling soup of desires, fear, hatred, love, and joy. Every thought, every feeling, every heartbeat creates ripples in this energy, altering the very fabric of the warp. If we think of the warp as a giant mirror, then the souls of the living are like the reflections that twist and distort with every flicker of emotion. And it's these emotions, these thoughts, that feed the creatures of the warp, the demons. They are not mindless beasts. They are the personifications of emotions and ideas given form. Each demon is a representation of something, an idea, a desire, a nightmare. Whether they are born from the boiling hatred of war, the overwhelming pleasure of indulgence, or the unyielding despair of the doomed, they exist as vessels of these forces. And in this, they are intimately connected with the thoughts and emotions that give them power. For the inhabitants of the material universe, the warp is both a source of immense power and a lurking, dangerous presence. It affects everything in ways both subtle and catastrophic. Ships traveling through the warp face the horrors of navigation, as the very nature of the space twists and distorts everything in its path. The fabric of reality itself bends and warps, and with it, the minds of those who enter. Psychers, those sensitive to the warp, often speak of the mind-altering effects it has on them. The longer they spend within the Imperium, the more they risk being consumed by its overwhelming force. But here's the thing. Everything that passes through the warp leaves a trace, an echo, and those who are sensitive enough can feel it. Think about it. Every emotion you have, every thought, no matter how fleeting, could leave a ripple in the warp. And this, in a way, is the key to understanding how demons might interact with our minds. The warp is an immense, sprawling network of thought and emotion, and it doesn't just passively exist. It is ever aware, always reacting to the energies that pass through it, making it a living, breathing entity in its own right. Some might say that the warp is like a giant radio network, its waves carrying thoughts and emotions across distances unimaginable in the material world. Demons, as beings born from this network, could theoretically tune into these waves. What if they could sense the shifting thoughts of mortals as they travel through the warp? What if our minds, with all their thoughts and desires, become like signals to the demons, attracting their attention? This idea isn't far-fetched when you consider the deeper theories from the fan base. Some believe that the warp's nature is fundamentally tied to psychic energy, the energy that psychers harness. It's thought that the warp itself is like a psychic mirror, reflecting the emotions and desires of every living being. When a mortal focuses their mind, especially when under extreme emotional duress, that energy can resonate through the warp, like a beacon to those who dwell there. Demons, with their primal connection to the warp, might not only sense these energies, but they could potentially influence them. The sheer vastness of the warp means that it is a chaotic, uncontrollable environment. Some theorists suggest that the warp's unbound nature means that even the most fleeting, seemingly insignificant thought could leave an imprint, like a stone thrown into an ocean, creating ripples that echo for eternity. In this sense, the warp isn't just a passive observer of the material universe. It's an active participant. It influences and is influenced by the thoughts and emotions of those who live within the material world. If we take this to its logical conclusion, we can start to entertain the idea that demons could be aware of us, not in the way we understand awareness, but in the way that they tap into the very fabric of psychic energy. Just as a psyker can hear the whispers of the warp or tap into its power, so too could demons use the warp to hear the thoughts of mortals. After all, their existence is shaped by the emotions and thoughts that permeate the Imperium. To ignore this would be to overlook one of the most intriguing and terrifying facets of their nature. In the end, the warp is more than just a place. It is a reflection of every thought, every emotion, and every moment of existence across the galaxy. And in that reflection, the demons are more than just mindless creatures. They are the echoes of our fears, desires, and thoughts, taking form in ways that we can barely comprehend. And that makes the question, can demons hear our thoughts? Not only compelling, but essential to understanding just how intimately connected we truly are with the warp. Demons are the embodiment of the warp itself, its very soul made manifest. They are born from the raw, emotional energy that pulses through the Imperium, giving form to desires, fears, and obsessions that ripple across the galaxy. These entities are more than just creatures. They are primal forces, reflections of the most fundamental aspects of existence. Every whisper of emotion, every moment of intense passion or despair, births a new demon or strengthens one already in existence. But how do these beings come into being, and what is their true connection to the warp? That's where things get both chilling and fascinating. The origins of demons are as intertwined with the warp as the stars are with the night sky. They were birthed from the birth of the warp itself, at a time when the Imperium was still a vast, unexplored ocean of psychic energy. But as sentient beings began to emerge in the material universe, their thoughts, desires, and dreams began to spill into the warp, giving rise to the first demons. They were like the echoes of these thoughts, fragments of emotion solidified into form. Unlike the creatures of the material realm, demons were not bound by flesh or bone. They were energy made manifest, constantly shifting and changing with the tides of emotion in the Imperium. Over time, these demons began to take on more defined forms, often linked to the emotions and ideas that birthed them. Some demons represent the lustful desires of the living, while others embody the cruelty of war, the endless hunger for power, or the cold embrace of death. They became embodiments of chaos, chaos itself being a force that is constantly in motion, constantly shifting, never stable, never predictable. Demons, in a sense, are not just creatures in the traditional sense. They are the personifications of that chaos, and their very existence is a testament to the power of the warp. The relationship between demons and the warp is symbiotic, in a sense. The demons feed off the emotions of the living, drawing their strength from the psychic energy that permeates the Imperium. The more powerful the emotions, the stronger the demon becomes. This means that the emotions of mortals, especially those who are deeply connected to the warp, like psychers, are like a feast for these entities. In fact, it is often said that the more intense the emotion, the more likely it is to attract the attention of a demon. When a psyker experiences intense psychic energy, it creates a sort of beacon, a flare of energy that can attract demons like moths to a flame. Some fan theories even suggest that the demons are not just passive creatures feeding off these emotions. Instead, they might actively manipulate or feed on them, guiding the thoughts and actions of mortals to increase the intensity of these emotions. This is particularly fascinating when we think about the Chaos Gods, as they are often depicted as using demons to further their own agendas. Each of the Chaos Gods, Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Slaanesh, has their own realm within the warp, a domain where their demons are most powerful. In these realms, the demons act as both agents and instruments, shaping the emotions and thoughts of mortals to further the will of their masters. The connection between demons and the Chaos Gods is crucial. These gods are not like the deities of the material universe. They are manifestations of concepts and emotions, and they require the energy from the warp, an energy fueled by the emotions of sentient beings, to thrive. Demons are their instruments in this great cosmic game. They carry out the will of their masters, sowing chaos and destruction across the galaxy. But in return, the gods also imbue their demons with power, granting them abilities that make them formidable forces of nature. There's a fascinating theory among fans that the demons themselves are not entirely independent entities. Some believe that demons are simply the tools or extensions of the Chaos Gods themselves. They are given form and substance by the will of their masters, but they are also shaped by the emotions of those in the material universe. Essentially, they are beings that exist to perpetuate the cycle of chaos, to feed the desires and emotions of mortals, and to manifest the will of the Chaos Gods. But whether demons have free will, or whether they are simply instruments of chaos, is a question that remains unanswered. The complexity of demons extends beyond their connection to the warp. They are not just abstract concepts. They are beings of incredible power and intelligence, each one capable of influencing the world around them in subtle and terrifying ways. Some demons are portrayed as cunning manipulators, capable of infiltrating the minds of mortals and twisting their desires to suit their own ends. Others are more direct, using brute strength and destructive power to achieve their goals. These demons are often seen as representatives of the Chaos Gods themselves, carrying out their will in a more personal, hands-on manner. What makes demons even more terrifying is that they are not bound by the same limitations as mortals. They can traverse the warp with ease, moving between the realms of reality and the immaterium at will. This gives them a near unlimited scope of influence, as they can enter the material universe whenever they choose. Some even speculate that demons can manipulate the fabric of reality itself, altering the minds of mortals and influencing the events of the galaxy to suit their masters. The idea that demons could hear our thoughts, then, isn't so far-fetched. If the warp itself is a realm of psychic energy, constantly in flux and shaped by the emotions and thoughts of every sentient being, then it stands to reason that demons, as creatures born of this energy, could have an innate connection to our minds. They may not be able to hear our thoughts in the traditional sense, but they could sense our emotions and desires, picking up on the psychic waves that ripple through the warp. This connection, though subtle and hard to perceive, could be why some mortals feel the presence of demons even when they are not physically near. The mere act of thinking, of feeling, could send out ripples in the warp that attract the attention of these entities, making them aware of our inner world in ways we might not even fully understand. In the end, the role of demons in the warp is far more complex than it might first appear. They are not just mindless monsters lurking in the shadows. They are embodiments of chaos itself, born from the very energy that makes up the warp. They are both the product of the emotions of the living and instruments of the chaos gods, carrying out the will of their masters while feeding on the energy of the material universe. And in this way, they are intimately connected with the thoughts, desires, and fears of mortals, making it possible, perhaps even likely, that they can sense our innermost thoughts and feelings. Psychic powers in the Warhammer 40K universe are one of the most enigmatic and dangerous aspects of existence. They aren't just a tool, they are a gateway, a connection to the very fabric of the universe itself. And this connection is often to the warp, the Imperium, the realm where thoughts, emotions, and energy collide, twist, and take on a life of their own. Psychic phenomena, whether they're small acts of telepathy or massive devastating blasts of psychic energy, are rooted in this chaotic sea of raw power. But what if these psychic powers are more than just human abilities? What if they're an open invitation to the warp? The idea that we can send our thoughts through this unfathomable space is both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Psychic powers are a fundamental part of the Warhammer 40K universe. From the most basic form of telekinesis to the mind-shattering powers of psychers, psychic abilities are an intrinsic part of life in the grimdark future. What we often forget is that these powers don't exist in a vacuum. They are, in many ways, tethered to the warp, especially the more potent psychic abilities. Psychers, those who can manipulate the energies of the warp, are able to tap into this infinite well of psychic power and direct it in ways both beautiful and horrifying. What makes these abilities so fascinating is the fact that the warp is a psychic realm in itself. It's a dimension full of raw, untapped psychic energy that is just waiting for something, to tap into it. Psychers, in a sense, are like conduits. They can open doors into the warp, sending out their thoughts, emotions, and even psychic signals to be received by others or to interact with the universe in ways that mortals can't fully understand. These thoughts, especially when they are amplified by strong emotions, become ripples in the warp, which can travel vast distances, though the nature of this travel is anything but simple. Now, imagine that the thoughts sent through the warp don't just evaporate into the ether. What if these thoughts become a beacon, a signal that echoes through the chaotic currents of the Imperium, reaching out to the farthest corners of the galaxy? This is where things start to get eerie. Some believe that the warp is like an immense network, a psychic web connecting every living being in the galaxy. Each time a psychic signal is sent, it creates a ripple, a small wave in the vast ocean of the warp. The more powerful the psychic signal, the bigger the ripple, and the more it reaches. When a psyker sends a thought across the warp, it isn't just a quick flash. It's an echo that may travel through the warp, influencing others, drawing attention, or even triggering a response from the entities that reside there. Now consider the idea that demons, born from the warp and intricately connected to it, could be attuned to these psychic signals. They are already bound to the realm of the warp, so it stands to reason that they would be able to sense, and perhaps even interact with, the psychic signals sent by psychers and mortals alike. The most powerful psychers might be able to broadcast their thoughts far and wide, sending ripples across the warp that could be picked up by demons. This would make them both a potential threat and a valuable tool. Demons might not just sense the emotions or intentions behind these thoughts. They could directly feed off them, grow stronger, or even influence them. There are fan theories that suggest that the very act of sending psychic thoughts through the warp could be a form of psychic communication that is easily intercepted by demons. One of the most fascinating elements of psychic phenomena in the Warhammer 40K universe is the role of the human mind in shaping the psychic energy that travels through the warp. Unlike the material world, where thoughts and emotions are contained within the mind, the warp is a realm where these things become tangible. Thoughts sent through the warp aren't just abstract. They are physical manifestations of psychic energy, and they can have consequences. A thought of fear could amplify the power of a demon, while a thought of anger might create an explosion of psychic force that damages reality itself. The nature of psychic power in the warp is unpredictable, uncontrollable, and dangerous. It's also important to note that psychic energy isn't just one way. The warp, being a chaotic and ever-changing realm, isn't simply a space that receives psychic signals. It's a place that interacts with these signals, bending and distorting them in ways that can have unintended consequences. For example, a psyker might send out a thought, only for that thought to be corrupted by the warp itself. Some believe that this is one of the reasons why psykers are so dangerous. They can never fully control what they send out into the warp. The very act of using psychic powers opens a window into the Imperium, and sometimes what comes back through that window is far worse than anything they could have anticipated. Fan theories suggest that demons, being born from the warp, can manipulate these psychic signals in ways that go beyond simply hearing or receiving them. They might be able to twist these thoughts, turning them into something more potent, more destructive. For example, a psyker who is attempting to send a message or influence the minds of others might inadvertently become a beacon for a demon who is hungry for psychic energy. This demon could then latch on to the psyker's thoughts, amplifying them and twisting them into something darker. It's a dangerous dance, a battle of wills between the psyker and the denizens of the warp. There's another theory that suggests the warp itself might have a form of awareness, a kind of sentience that responds to the thoughts and emotions sent through it. If this is true, then the psychic signals sent by psykers could be more than just passive ripples. They could be actively shaping the warp in ways that influence everything from the creation of demons to the very fabric of reality itself. The very act of using psychic powers could be an invitation to the warp, a call to the demons that roam its depths, and perhaps even a way to communicate with the chaos gods themselves. The connection between psychic phenomena and the warp, therefore, is one that can't be easily defined. The warp is both a conduit and a receiver of psychic energy, and those who can manipulate this energy are walking a dangerous line between wielding immense power and inviting the attention of forces beyond their control. When a mortal sends out their thoughts into the warp, it's not just a transmission of energy. It's a dangerous act, a crossing into a realm where thoughts, emotions, and reality itself can be bent, broken, and twisted. And in this place, there's no telling who or what might be listening. Demons, as denizens of the warp, possess a different kind of sensory perception than anything we experience in the material universe. Their senses are not constrained by the physical limits that bind mortal beings. They do not perceive the world through eyes, ears, or other conventional means. Instead, their sensory perception is far more primal, attuned to the very essence of the warp itself. The boundaries between thought, emotion, and raw psychic energy are blurred for them, and they are able to sense these things in a way that is almost incomprehensible to us. Imagine, if you will, a realm where emotions are not just internal experiences, but are as tangible as physical objects. In the warp, feelings like anger, fear, and desire are not abstract concepts. They are forces, currents of energy that flow through the fabric of reality. And demons, as creatures born from this energy, can feel these currents like a fish feels the water it swims in. It is said that the very nature of demons makes them keenly aware of any disturbance in the warp. They can sense emotions and thoughts that ripple through this vast psychic ocean, much in the same way we might notice a faint breeze on a hot day. But for demons, the psychic energy they perceive is far more significant and potent. It's their sustenance, their fuel, their power. Every thought, every fear, every desire can be felt by them, resonating like a signal in the warp. One might think of the way a predator senses its prey, a subtle shift in the environment, an increase in activity, the faintest trace of movement. This is how demons might feel the presence of mortals, especially those who are sensitive to the warp, like psykers. It's not so much that they hear our thoughts in the way we understand hearing, but rather they sense the emotions and mental signals that emanate from us. If you've ever felt someone's gaze on the back of your neck, even when you couldn't see them, it's a bit like that, only much more intense, much more visceral. The thoughts and emotions of mortals are like beacons to these creatures, who can latch onto the faintest psychic trace, honing in on it like a hunter tracking its prey. There are theories in the fan community that suggest demons are able to hear our thoughts through a form of psychic resonance. Think of it like tuning into a frequency. When a mortal experiences a strong emotion, that emotion sends out psychic waves that ripple through the warp. Demons attuned to these psychic currents can detect these waves with incredible precision. The more intense the emotion, whether it's fear, anger, or desire, the more powerful the signal becomes, drawing demons to it like moths to a flame. In this way, demons can hear the thoughts of mortals not because they can access the intricacies of our minds, but because they can feel the emotions that accompany those thoughts. And in a universe where thoughts are as powerful as the stars themselves, even the slightest flicker can be noticed by the right entity. There are also fan theories suggesting that demons, being deeply connected to the warp, are able to access and manipulate the psychic energy that makes up the thoughts and emotions of mortals. In essence, they can not only sense what we feel, but they can also influence it. A demon's presence might alter the emotional landscape of a mortal, amplifying their fear or desire to feed off of it, or even steering their thoughts in specific directions. It's as if a demon can reach into the very core of a mortal's psyche, twisting and distorting their emotions like a puppeteer pulling the strings of a marionette. This is why demons are so dangerous. They are not just passive observers. They are active participants in the lives of those they encounter. They can whisper into the minds of mortals, planting seeds of doubt, fear, or temptation, and watch as these thoughts grow into something darker, something more dangerous. The question then becomes, how do demons know what to focus on? What makes a particular mortal's thoughts or emotions stand out in the vast, chaotic sea of psychic energy? Some believe that demons are drawn to the strongest emotional disturbances, the moments where a mortal's psychic energy is at its most intense. These moments are like flashes of light in the dark, and they can be seen from a great distance. Think of it like a flare gun going off in the middle of a dark night. Suddenly, everything is illuminated, and demons, being creatures of the warp, are naturally drawn to this light. But not all emotions are created equal. The warp is, after all, a reflection of the chaos gods, and each of these deities is associated with specific emotions and desires. Khorne, the blood god, is the embodiment of rage and violence. Nurgle, the plague god, thrives on despair and decay. Tzeentch, the changer of ways, feeds on manipulation and ambition. Slaanesh, the dark prince, is fueled by excess and indulgence. Each of these chaos gods has their own set of demons, and these demons are particularly attuned to the emotions and thoughts associated with their patron god. For example, a demon of Khorne might be drawn to the feeling of intense anger or hatred, while a demon of Slaanesh might be attracted to feelings of pleasure or excess. This makes the demonic perception of thoughts even more complex. It's not just that they can sense mortal emotions, it's that they can sense the emotions that most align with their patron god's desires. There's also the fascinating idea that demons, due to their connection with the warp, might be able to tap into the collective unconscious of all sentient beings. If the warp is a reflection of every thought, every emotion, and every desire ever felt, then demons could potentially have access to this vast reservoir of knowledge. In this way, they might not only sense individual thoughts, but also the broader emotional trends of the galaxy. Demons could be aware of entire swaths of society's fears, hopes, and desires, using this knowledge to manipulate the material realm. This would explain why demons are often seen as so capable of causing chaos. They don't just understand the individual, they understand the collective psyche of entire civilizations. And while it may seem like a demon's senses are merely a byproduct of their existence in the warp, Many fans argue that their sensory abilities are a key part of their power. Demons are not passive creatures. They are active, constantly sensing and manipulating the energies of the material and immaterial realms. Whether it's feeding on emotions, manipulating minds, or even altering reality itself, demons are always present, always watching, and always waiting. In the end, the nature of demonic sensory perception is a question that touches on the very essence of what it means to be a creature of the warp. It's not just about hearing thoughts or sensing emotions. It's about being attuned to the very fabric of reality and using that awareness to shape the world in ways that mortals can barely comprehend. And this makes them far more dangerous than we could ever imagine. The interaction between mortal minds and the warp is one of the most unsettling aspects of the Warhammer 40K universe. For mortals, the warp is an unknowable force, a realm of unbridled psychic energy that lies just beneath the surface of reality. It is a place that defies the physical laws of the material world, a place where the mind's influence can shape the very fabric of existence. But what if the mind is not just passive in its relationship with the warp? What if the thoughts, fears, and desires of mortals actually have a tangible effect on the warp itself? This is the terrifying potential that lies at the heart of the connection between mortal minds and the Imperium. Psychers, those gifted or cursed with the ability to tap into the powers of the warp, are perhaps the most direct link between the material world and the Imperium. They are the conduits through which psychic energy flows, able to harness the raw power of the warp and shape it into devastating blasts or subtle manipulations. But even those who aren't psychers are still tied to the warp in ways they might not understand. Every thought, every emotion, no matter how fleeting, sends ripples through the warp. The impact of these ripples can vary. Some might be so small as to be unnoticed, while others could be enough to attract the attention of the demons that roam the Imperium. And as for the psychers, their very existence is a constant interface between their minds and the warp, making them both powerful and incredibly vulnerable. For most mortals, the connection to the warp is subconscious, a faint undercurrent that flows just below the surface of their consciousness. It's an invisible tether, one that they aren't even aware of, but it's always there, shaping their perceptions, their fears, and their desires. This connection isn't something that can be easily explained by logic. It's more like an instinctive pulse, a deep, primal link between the material world and the Imperium. Mortals may not consciously know it, but the warp is always listening. And every thought, every emotion, is a signal sent out into the vast sea of psychic energy that is the warp. The more intense the emotion, the stronger the signal becomes. Fear, rage, despair, and even joy, they all resonate through the warp like a flare in the night sky, drawing attention to those who send them. Now, imagine what it must be like for a demon who is intimately connected to the warp to feel these signals. Demons are creatures of pure psychic energy, born from the warp and shaped by the emotions and desires that flow through it. Their very existence is a reflection of the thoughts, fears, and dreams of mortals. These demons are not bound by the same limitations that mortals are. They don't have bodies, at least not in the way we understand them. They are free to move through the warp, able to traverse the vast psychic ocean with ease. But they aren't just passive beings. They are hunters, searching for the ripples in the warp that are created by the thoughts and emotions of mortals. In this sense, the minds of mortals are like a map to these creatures. The stronger the thought, the stronger the emotion, the more likely it is to be sensed by a demon. Fan theories abound on just how demons access these thoughts. Some suggest that demons can't directly hear the thoughts of mortals, at least not in the conventional sense. Instead, they are attuned to the psychic signatures of emotions, like a psychic radar. When a mortal experiences intense fear, for example, that fear generates a unique psychic signature, one that a demon can track. It's like a beacon in the warp, calling out to the demons, making them aware of the mortal's presence. And from there, the demon might choose to either feed off the psychic energy or attempt to manipulate the mortal, using the fear to twist their mind or actions. Others theorize that the connection between mortal minds and the warp is not just a one-way street. Instead of mortals simply sending out their emotions to the warp, there is the possibility that the warp, through its inhabitants, the demons, can also influence mortal minds. The idea that Daemons can plant thoughts into a mortal's mind, steering their emotions and actions, is a terrifying one. Think of it like a whisper in the back of your mind, a thought that doesn't feel quite like your own, yet you can't shake it. Over time, these whispers could grow stronger, until the mortal is no longer sure where their own thoughts end and where the demon's influence begins. This kind of manipulation is part of what makes demons so dangerous. They aren't just predators in the traditional sense. They are psychological predators capable of twisting the very fabric of the mortal mind to suit their needs. One theory that has gained traction among fans is the idea that demons can use their innate connection to the warp to read a mortal's thoughts, not through some direct telepathic link, but through the emotional residue left behind in the warp. Think of it as a trace, like the scent left behind by a person who has passed through a room. Every time a mortal experiences an emotion, whether it's joy, despair, lust, or rage, that emotion leaves a psychic mark in the warp. Demons, with their heightened sensitivity to psychic energy, can follow these marks, tracking mortals across vast distances. It's like a trail of breadcrumbs, each thought and emotion leaving a mark that a demon can follow until they find the source. But it's not just emotions that demons might sense. It's the potential for change. The mortal mind is full of potential, and in the right circumstances, it can become a vessel for incredible psychic power. Some believe that demons are attracted not just to the raw emotional energy of mortals, but to their potential to manifest that energy in the form of psychic powers. Psychers, being attuned to the warp, are particularly vulnerable. The stronger their psychic potential, the more likely it is that they will draw the attention of demons. These powerful entities might sense the latent psychic energy within a mortal and attempt to influence or corrupt them, feeding off their strength and twisting their potential toward dark ends. This is where the idea of demons hearing our thoughts takes on a more sinister form. It's not just that they are passive observers of our emotions, it's that they are active participants in shaping them. Some fan theories suggest that demons can interact with the very thoughts of mortals, influencing their desires, fears, and dreams to create more potent ripples in the warp. In this way, demons are not merely drawn to mortals' minds. They are actively influencing them, planting seeds of doubt, temptation, or terror. It's a subtle form of control, one that can be difficult to detect until it's too late. The connection between mortal minds and the warp is far more intimate than we might like to admit. Even the most mundane thought or fleeting emotion could be enough to send a signal into the vast, dark sea of the Imperium, attracting the attention of demons that roam its depths. And once a daemon becomes aware of a mortal, the possibility for manipulation, corruption, and possession becomes all too real. Whether it's through the amplification of emotions, the whispering of thoughts, or the outright invasion of the mind, demons are always watching, always waiting for that crack in the mind's defenses. And when they find it, they strike, using the very thoughts of the mortal to shape the reality they inhabit. Can demons hear our thoughts? It's a question that strikes at the very heart of what makes the warp so terrifying. The idea that creatures born from the depths of a psychic realm, creatures that exist on the very edges of reality, could tap into the most private, intimate parts of our minds is unsettling. It conjures images of whispers in the dark, of unseen forces manipulating the very fabric of our thoughts and desires. But can they really hear us? Or is it something more, something darker and more insidious? Theories abound, with fans delving into the nature of the warp and the demons that dwell within it to explore the chilling possibility that demons might be able to do far more than simply sense our emotions. They might be able to listen to our very thoughts. First, let's consider the connection between mortals and the warp. The warp is not a passive space. It's alive, filled with psychic energy that is shaped by the emotions, thoughts, and desires of every sentient being in the universe. It is a mirror of the material world, a reflection of the passions and fears that define existence. When we think, when we feel, when we desire, these moments don't just exist within our minds. They send out ripples into the warp, broadcasting our innermost thoughts and emotions like a beacon. Now, the question arises. If the warp is so attuned to these psychic ripples, can the creatures that dwell within it, the demons, actually perceive these signals? Are they passively drawn to the psychic energy of mortals, or do they actively listen, honing in on the thoughts that pass through the warp? The idea that demons can hear our thoughts isn't as far-fetched as it might seem. If we accept that the warp is a realm of psychic energy, a place where thoughts and emotions take on a tangible form, then it stands to reason that the beings born from this realm, demons, might have a unique ability to interact with that energy. Demons are not simply creatures of flesh and bone. They are manifestations of emotion, thought, and raw psychic power. Their existence is defined by the very things that we, as mortals, experience: fear, anger, lust, and every other human emotion that sends ripples through the warp. These emotions, when intense enough, might create psychic signals that travel through the Imperium, and demons, as creatures of that same realm, could very well be able to tune into these signals. It's here that the question becomes more complicated. Are demons hearing our thoughts in the traditional sense? Are they listening in on our minds, as though they were eavesdropping on our inner monologues? Or is it something far darker, a manipulation of our emotions, a subtle guiding of our desires and fears to feed the warp, and by extension, the demons themselves? Some fan theories suggest that demons are not just passive listeners to our thoughts. Instead, they are active participants in the psychic landscape. They might not hear our thoughts directly as we understand them, but they are able to detect the emotional residue left behind by those thoughts, the psychic footprints we leave in the warp. These footprints could be enough to attract their attention, enough for them to sense the thoughts that created them. In a way, it's like a form of psychic radar. When we experience a powerful emotion, it creates a disturbance in the warp, a ripple, a flash of energy that reverberates through the Imperium. Demons, attuned to this energy, can feel these disturbances. They can sense the intensity of the emotion behind the thought, the power of the psychic signal. And it's not just the raw emotion that they're sensing, it's the potential for influence. The stronger the thought, the more powerful the demon that might be drawn to it. A thought of fear could summon a demon of terror, while a thought of greed might attract a demon of excess. In this sense, demons might not hear our thoughts directly, but they are able to detect the emotional energy that those thoughts create. One of the most chilling aspects of this idea is that demons don't just respond to our thoughts passively. They can actively feed off them. Think about it. If a demon can sense the psychic signature of a thought, can they also amplify that thought? What if demons can influence or manipulate the thoughts of mortals? This concept adds another layer of complexity to the question. Demons might not simply be reacting to our thoughts. They could be subtly nudging our emotions, pushing us towards certain actions or decisions. They might be capable of whispering into our minds, planting seeds of doubt or desire, and feeding off the psychic energy generated by these thoughts. It's a chilling thought to consider. What if every moment of fear, of lust, of rage is being subtly shaped by these entities, not just as a passive response to our emotions, but as an active manipulation of our psyche? There's also the theory that demons, as beings of the warp, are attuned to more than just individual thoughts. Some fans speculate that the warp is like a vast psychic ocean, where the thoughts of every living being create waves that travel across the fabric of reality. Demons, as creatures of this realm, could be able to sense these waves and track them across the galaxy. This would mean that our thoughts, no matter how fleeting, could be felt by demons, even if we don't consciously project them. This idea adds an eerie dimension to the idea of the warp being a reflection of every living creature's mind. If the warp is constantly shifting and pulsing with psychic energy, then demons might not just be listening to isolated thoughts. They might be perceiving the collective mental landscape of entire civilizations, sensing the fears, hopes, and desires of billions of minds all at once. But what if demons can influence our thoughts directly? What if they can reach into our minds, manipulate our emotions, and make us more vulnerable to their influence? Some fan theories suggest that this could explain why mortals are so often driven to madness by the warp. Demons in this case are not just passive entities waiting for a psychic signal to latch onto. They are actively shaping the thoughts and desires of mortals to suit their own needs. It's not just about hearing our thoughts. It's about controlling them, feeding off the emotions they generate, and using those emotions to strengthen the demons themselves. This form of manipulation could explain why psykers are so dangerous. They are constantly walking the line between wielding incredible power and succumbing to the influence of the demons that lurk just beyond their perception. As unsettling as it is to consider, there is also the idea that demons, being creatures of pure emotion and psychic energy, might be able to access our thoughts through our emotions. This would mean that demons are not just responding to thoughts that are projected into the warp. They are responding to the emotions that create those thoughts. In this sense, they wouldn't need to hear our thoughts directly. They would simply sense the emotional undercurrent that gives rise to them. If a mortal is experiencing fear, that fear might attract the attention of a demon, even if the mortal doesn't consciously think about the source of their fear. It's as though the emotion itself becomes a signal, a marker that draws demons toward the source of that energy. So, can demons hear our thoughts? The answer is likely more complex than a simple yes or no. They might not hear our thoughts in the way we imagine, but they can certainly sense the emotions and psychic energy that those thoughts create. And in the warp, where thoughts, emotions, and reality itself are intertwined, even the faintest psychic ripple can draw the attention of creatures whose very existence depends on feeding off the energies of the material realm. The warp is a place where nothing is truly private, where even our innermost thoughts can be sensed and manipulated by the entities that dwell within it. And that, in itself, is a terrifying thought. The Chaos Gods, each representing a fundamental aspect of existence, are not just powerful beings that exist in their own realms within the warp. They are the architects of desire, passion, and despair across the universe. They are forces that influence everything, from the most trivial thoughts to the grandest actions. It's their very nature to shape and twist the emotions, thoughts, and desires of mortals, and they do this not only through the demons they send into the material world, but through a far more subtle, insidious method. The Chaos Gods are able to amplify and manipulate the thoughts of mortals, bending their minds to the whims of their dark ambitions. Each of the Chaos Gods feeds off a particular emotion or concept. Khorne, the Blood God, thrives on anger, violence, and the pursuit of bloodshed. Nurgle, the Plague God, is nourished by decay, despair, and the inevitable death that comes to all things. Tzeentch, the Changer of Ways, is the embodiment of change, ambition, and manipulation, always working in the background to twist fate and shape the future. Slaanesh, the Dark Prince, draws its strength from excess, indulgence, and the pursuit of pleasure in all its forms. These gods are not distant entities, removed from the world of mortals. They are intimately connected to every being, every moment, and every thought. It is through their demons that they reach into the minds of mortals, feeding on their thoughts and shaping their desires. Demons are the perfect instruments for these gods. They are not simply mindless creatures. They are embodiments of the very things that the Chaos Gods represent. A demon of Khorne is not just a monster. It is the personification of rage, a being that thrives on violence and hatred. A demon of Nurgle is a reflection of disease, decay, and despair. They are the physical manifestations of the Chaos Gods' influence, and their role is to carry out the will of their masters, to amplify the emotions that fuel their gods, and bend mortals to their will. The relationship between the Chaos Gods, their demons, and mortal minds is one of symbiosis and manipulation. The gods influence mortals through their demons, while the demons, in turn, draw strength from the emotions they elicit. But it's not just about creating chaos for chaos's sake. The Chaos Gods don't act randomly. Their influence is calculated and deliberate. Each god seeks to spread their own influence and control over the material universe, and they do this by targeting the very thoughts and emotions of mortals. It's not just about inciting mindless violence, indulging in hedonistic pleasure, or spreading disease for its own sake. No, the Chaos Gods are far more insidious than that. They understand that the most effective way to control mortals is to manipulate their innermost thoughts and desires, to feed off their fear, their ambition, their lust for power or pleasure. By doing so, the gods can amplify these emotions, turning them into something far more dangerous, something that can shape the course of history itself. For example, Khorne's influence over the minds of mortals is not simply about encouraging them to fight. It's about feeding their anger and hatred, turning those emotions into a rage that consumes everything in its path. Khorne's demons are like the flames that fan the embers of violence, pushing mortals to commit horrific acts of bloodshed, creating a cycle of violence that strengthens the blood god's hold on the universe. Mortals, in their moments of rage, become pawns in Khorne's grand design, amplifying his power with each act of violence they commit. What's more disturbing is that the more a mortal indulges in these violent impulses, the more likely they are to be drawn into Khorne's orbit. Demons of Khorne whisper into the minds of warriors, pushing them to fight, to kill, and to spill blood, each drop adding to the god's strength. Slaanesh, on the other hand, manipulates mortals through their desires, feeding on their pursuit of pleasure and excess. The Dark Prince does not simply encourage hedonism. It twists mortal thoughts, magnifying their lust, their desire for indulgence, until it becomes all-consuming. Slaanesh's demons are not just seductive figures. They are manifestations of the longing that mortals feel, the unquenchable thirst for pleasure that can never be satisfied. They prey on the weaknesses of mortals, pushing them to seek more and more extreme forms of gratification until they are lost in the excess, unable to escape. This, of course, is exactly what Slaanesh desires. The more mortals give in to their desires, the more they feed the god, and the more they open themselves to the influence of demons who can further shape their desires into a destructive force. Nurgle's influence, while seemingly more passive, is no less manipulative. The plague god feeds off the despair and inevitability of decay, and his demons are masters of sowing those feelings in mortals. In a universe filled with war and suffering, Nurgle's influence is insidious, creeping into the hearts of mortals who have given up hope, who have succumbed to the inevitability of death. Demons of Nurgle don't just spread disease. They spread apathy, resignation, and despair. By amplifying these feelings, they open the door for mortals to fall into Nurgle's embrace, where they are consumed by the god's eternal cycle of decay. In this way, Nurgle doesn't just make mortals sick, he makes them accept their sickness, making them believe that there is no escape, no salvation. The more a mortal gives into this despair, the more they are bound to the plague god. Then there is Tzeentch, the master manipulator, whose influence over mortal minds is perhaps the most dangerous of all. The changer of ways does not simply feed off of ambition or change. He twists them, making mortals believe that they are in control when, in fact, they are pawns in his ever-shifting game. Tzeentch's demons are the architects of deception, the voices that whisper in the ears of mortals, guiding them toward a future that is shaped by the god's designs. Tzeentch doesn't just amplify mortal desires for power or knowledge. He warps them, making them believe that they are working towards some greater goal, when in reality they are merely fulfilling the god's will. The demons of Tzeentch are not just agents of change. They are the very agents of confusion, manipulating mortals to serve their own ends, driving them toward a future that will ultimately bring about their destruction. The idea that the Chaos Gods can amplify or manipulate mortal thoughts is not just some abstract concept. It's a practical reality. The gods are not distant, unknowable forces. They are deeply involved in the thoughts, emotions, and desires of every sentient being in the galaxy. And the demons, as their agents, are the means through which they carry out their influence. The more mortals give in to the emotions and desires that the gods embody, the stronger the gods become. And the demons are the catalysts that make this possible, amplifying those emotions and guiding mortals down paths that lead to destruction. Whether it's through violence, indulgence, despair, or manipulation, the Chaos Gods are always present, always working through their demons to shape the minds of mortals to serve their dark purposes. And so the question remains, how much control do mortals truly have over their thoughts and emotions? In a universe where the Chaos Gods and their demons have such a profound influence, can anyone truly escape their manipulation? Perhaps in the end, the very thoughts that we think we control are not ours at all, but rather the whispers of demons guiding us toward the will of the gods. The question of whether demons can hear our thoughts is one that has sparked much debate among Warhammer 40K fans. Theories about how demons interact with mortal minds abound, each more chilling than the last. Some fans argue that demons are simply passive creatures drawn to the emotions and desires of mortals, while others believe that they can actively influence our thoughts, twisting our desires to feed the warp and their chaos masters. There's a certain fascination with the idea that our very thoughts might not be as private as we assume, and the warp, with its boundless psychic energy, might hold the key to understanding just how demons hear us. But this question, this chilling thought, isn't just about whether they can listen to our thoughts. It's about what they do with the information they gather and how deeply they're entwined with the fabric of our minds. One of the most prevalent theories among fans is that demons don't hear our thoughts in the traditional sense. Instead, they are attracted to the psychic energy that is emitted whenever we experience a strong emotion. The warp, after all, is a realm of psychic power, and every thought, every feeling, sends ripples through the Imperium. These ripples are like signals, broadcasting our innermost desires, fears, and hopes into the vast sea of the warp. Fans often compare this to a beacon, a lighthouse cutting through the dark, guiding demons to the source. The more intense the emotion, whether it's fear, rage, joy, or lust, the stronger the ripple becomes, and the more likely it is to attract the attention of the demons. This concept relies on the idea that demons are essentially drawn to the emotional flavor of mortal minds. They don't need to hear the specific thoughts themselves. They are just highly attuned to the psychic energy that these thoughts generate. Building on this idea, many fans speculate that demons might be able to sense the emotional content behind the thoughts, if not the thoughts themselves. For instance, when a mortal experiences a sudden surge of fear, it's not just the thought of fear that sends a signal. It's the intense emotion that accompanies it. In this sense, the thoughts might be secondary to the emotions that cause them. In a universe filled with conflict, suffering, and chaos, emotions are a constant source of energy, and demons, being creatures of the warp, are always hungry for this psychic fuel. The more powerful the emotion, the more potent the demon that might be drawn to it. It's almost as though the emotional energy acts as a signal, a marker for the demon to follow. Some believe that a demon of Khorne, for example, would be more likely to latch onto a surge of anger or hatred, while a demon of Slaanesh might be drawn to a moment of indulgence or lust. But there's another layer to this theory. Some fans argue that the connection between demons and mortal minds is not just one of passive reception, it's an active process. In other words, demons might not simply sense our thoughts and emotions, they might actively manipulate them. This theory suggests that demons, being creatures of the warp, are intimately connected with the flow of psychic energy. They don't just observe our emotional states, they can influence them, amplifying them, or even shaping them to serve their own purposes. For instance, A demon of Nurgle might not just feed off the despair of a mortal, but might actively increase that despair, pushing the mortal deeper into a sense of hopelessness. Similarly, a demon of Tzeentch could be seen as the puppet master of mortal thoughts, planting subtle seeds of doubt or ambition in the minds of mortals, guiding them toward a future that ultimately serves the god of change. This theory has roots in the idea that the warp is not just a reflection of mortal minds, but an active participant in shaping those minds. The more a mortal gives in to the thoughts and emotions that the demons feed on, the stronger the connection becomes. Eventually, the mortal might become so attuned to the warp that they unknowingly feed the demons even more. The demons might not only hear the thoughts, they might be subtly controlling them, pushing the mortal toward actions that serve their own ends. This would explain why so many mortals, especially psychers, are drawn to the warp in the first place. They are subconsciously feeding the demons and their masters even when they don't realize it. Another theory suggests that the warp, and by extension the demons, have a much deeper connection to mortal minds than we might think. Some fans posit that the warp is not just a place where thoughts and emotions go, it's a place where those thoughts can be permanently stored. Think of it like a psychic library, where the emotions, desires, and thoughts of every sentient being are archived. Demons, then, would have access to this vast repository of psychic energy, giving them not just the ability to sense emotions and thoughts in real time, but also the ability to hear the psychic echoes of those thoughts long after they were first conceived. This idea takes the notion of psychic energy to a new level. What if the warp is a reservoir of all thoughts and emotions, and the demons are like archivists, constantly searching for new sources of power? The thoughts of mortals, in this case, would not only be sensed as they occur, but would leave a lasting imprint on the warp, allowing demons to track them, feed on them, and potentially even manipulate them from afar. Then there are those who believe that the question of whether demons can hear our thoughts is not just about their ability to perceive us, but about the way they communicate with us. In a universe where psychic energy can transcend time and space, is it possible that demons are reaching into our minds, not only to sense our thoughts, but to influence them? Many fans speculate that the whispers we hear in our minds, the strange thoughts that seem to come from nowhere, might actually be the result of demons trying to make contact with us. These whispers could be a form of communication, a way for demons to implant their influence in our thoughts. Some fans point to the fact that psychers, in particular, often hear voices in their minds when they draw upon the warp, voices that may not be their own, but those of the demons who lurk there. The fan theories surrounding this question are as vast and varied as the warp itself. Some believe that demons are passive observers, drawn to the psychic energy of mortal thoughts like moths to a flame. Others argue that they are active participants in shaping those thoughts, feeding off our emotions and manipulating our desires to suit the will of the Chaos Gods. Still, others speculate that demons are not just hearing our thoughts. They are planting seeds in our minds, subtly guiding our actions and twisting our desires to further their dark purposes. And then there are the more eerie theories, suggesting that the warp itself is a repository of all thoughts and emotions, a place where demons can access our most intimate thoughts long after they have been conceived. In the end, the possibility that demons can hear our thoughts raises more questions than it answers. Are we as alone in our minds as we think, or are we being watched by the entities that dwell in the warp, their eyes and ears ever attuned to our innermost fears and desires? Theories will continue to evolve, but one thing is certain. The warp is a realm where the boundaries between thought, emotion, and reality are anything but clear. And in that murky, twisted place, the demons are always listening. The concept of psychic and demonic communication is one of the most unsettling and mysterious aspects of the Warhammer 40K universe. For mortals, the idea that thoughts can transcend the confines of the brain and travel through the warp is both awe-inspiring and terrifying. While we often think of telepathy as a power to be wielded by psychers, there's a darker, more insidious possibility that demons, as creatures of the warp, might have the ability to not only receive our thoughts, but to manipulate them, communicate with us, and even control our minds. And when you consider that the warp itself is a place where psychic energy is free-flowing and ever-changing, the lines between communication and manipulation start to blur. Telepathy, at its core, is the ability to send thoughts and ideas directly from one mind to another, bypassing the need for verbal language. In the grim, dark future of the 41st millennium, this ability is not limited to a rare few. Psychers, whether trained or born with the gift, use their powers to communicate across vast distances, to control minds, and to even reshape reality itself. For mortals, psychic communication is a tool, a powerful means of conveying thoughts and ideas without speaking a word. But for demons, telepathy is more than just a tool. It's an extension of their existence. Demons born from the warp are inherently tied to psychic energy. In the warp, thought is not confined to the mind. It flows like a current, a river of psychic energy that stretches across the cosmos. The very fabric of the Imperium is made from this energy, and demons, as creatures of that realm, are fully attuned to it. The idea that demons could communicate through telepathy, or through some form of mental communication, isn't a far-off theory. Some fans believe that demons are not just passive observers of our thoughts, but active participants in shaping them. Demons, with their intimate connection to the warp, could potentially access our minds at will, either to manipulate our thoughts or to communicate directly with us. The more we understand about the warp, the more we see how thoughts and emotions are tied to it. If the warp is a place where psychic energy flows freely, then it's possible that demons, with their heightened sensitivity to this energy, can tap into our minds with terrifying precision. Fan theories surrounding demonic communication often suggest that the relationship between mortals and demons is not just one of victim and predator, it's one of subtle influence. It's not that demons need to speak directly to us. They can communicate in ways that go beyond words. They can plant thoughts into our minds, twist our desires, or make us hear whispers in the dark. It's not just telepathy, it's a form of mental manipulation. When you think about it, the very concept of telepathy implies a direct connection between minds. If demons can establish that connection, then they could easily influence or even control the thoughts of mortals. This idea has gained traction among fans who see the warp not just as a place of psychic energy, but as a medium through which demons can influence the material world. One chilling fan theory suggests that demons can communicate with mortals through dreams, thoughts, or even voices in their heads. If the warp is a realm of raw psychic energy, then it's possible that demons are able to reach into our minds while we sleep or when we are vulnerable, planting ideas that seem like our own, but are in fact the result of demonic influence. This would explain the strange visions and dreams that psychers often experience, dreams that may not be their own, but rather the whispers of demons trying to reach them. In the Warhammer 40k lore, there are several instances where psychers or mortals hear voices that they can't explain. These voices often come in the form of whispers, faint and distant at first, but growing louder over time. It's said that these whispers are the demons calling, trying to establish a connection with the mortal mind, to sway their thoughts and influence their actions. Some fans believe that this is how demons work, not through direct communication, but through a slow, subtle intrusion into the psyche of their prey. Another theory posits that the communication between demons and mortals is not always conscious. The idea is that mortals might not always be aware that they are being influenced by a demon. Demons in this sense would not need to send clear thoughts or messages. Instead, they might subtly guide the emotions and desires of the mortal, nudging them in a direction that serves the demon's purpose. Think about the way that a whisper in your ear, even if you don't consciously hear it, can still affect your behavior. Fans often refer to this as the subliminal nature of demonic influence, a kind of passive communication where the demon is always present, subtly guiding the mortal toward a predetermined end. This theory is particularly disturbing because it implies that we might never know when our thoughts are truly our own and when they are being shaped by something darker. There is also the idea that demons, being creatures of pure psychic energy, don't necessarily need to communicate through language or thoughts at all. Instead, they might communicate through raw emotion, sending psychic pulses that influence the feelings of the mortal mind. This would explain why mortals often feel the presence of demons before they see them, why they feel the overwhelming sensation of dread or terror long before the demon even appears. The psychic energy that the demon emits could resonate with the mortal's own emotional state, amplifying their fears, desires, or ambitions. In a way, demons could communicate without words, simply by flooding the mortal mind with overwhelming emotions. This theory suggests that demons don't need to speak to us directly. They simply need to influence how we feel, and in doing so, they can shape our thoughts, decisions, and actions. Some fans take this further, suggesting that demons might not only influence our emotions, but also our perceptions of reality itself. The warp, after all, is a place where reality is fluid and constantly shifting, and the psychic energy that flows through it can warp the very fabric of existence. If demons can manipulate the psychic currents of the warp, then it stands to reason that they could also manipulate the way we perceive reality. They might not need to speak to us at all. Instead, they could subtly alter our perceptions, making us see the world in a way that benefits their plans. The more vulnerable we are, the more susceptible we become to their influence. This would explain why some mortals are drawn to the warp in the first place. They might not realize it, but their perceptions are being manipulated by the demons, leading them down a path of destruction and madness. Another fan theory suggests that demons communicate with mortals through the use of symbols and rituals, which are often associated with chaos. Chaos worshippers, in particular, are known to perform dark rituals to commune with the warp and its entities. In these rituals, demons are invoked and their power is channeled into the material world. Some fans speculate that these rituals are a form of communication between mortals and demons, where the demon doesn't need to speak directly but can influence the ritual and its outcomes. This theory suggests that mortals who seek to commune with the warp might be unknowingly opening themselves up to demonic influence, allowing the demons to guide their thoughts and actions through the ritual itself. It's a terrifying thought that every prayer, every invocation to the gods of chaos might be answered by more than just a deity. It could be answered by a demon, ready to whisper in the ears of the worshipper and bend their will to the gods of chaos. Ultimately, the idea of psychic and demonic communication blurs the lines between reality and the warp, between mortal minds and the entities that dwell within the Imperium. Whether demons communicate with mortals directly or manipulate their thoughts and emotions in more subtle ways, one thing is certain: they are always present, always watching, and always waiting for the right moment to reach into our minds. The connection between the material universe and the warp is a fragile one, and the demons that lurk in its depths are constantly looking for a way in. They might not speak to us in words, but their influence is everywhere, shaping our desires, our fears, and even our very perception of reality itself. In the end, the question is not just whether demons can communicate with us, it's how much control they truly have over our thoughts and minds, and perhaps, more disturbingly, how much of our own minds are truly ours. If demons can truly hear our thoughts, the implications for the Imperium of man are staggering. The very foundation of humanity's existence, from its rigid military structures to its strict religious orders, relies on secrecy, order, and control. If the malevolent beings of the warp can penetrate the minds of its citizens, even the most guarded thoughts are exposed to forces that have no regard for morality, justice, or survival. For the citizens of the Imperium, the idea that their thoughts might be laid bare to demons is a chilling one. It speaks to the vulnerability of the human mind in the face of entities so vast and unknowable that they might not even need physical presence to reach into the heart of a person. The Imperium, with its highly controlled and hierarchical society, places tremendous emphasis on the security of its citizens' thoughts and actions. Psykers, though powerful and necessary, are seen with suspicion as they represent a direct link to the chaotic realm of the warp. The Inquisition, the most feared institution in the Imperium, is tasked with rooting out heresy, psykers, and any form of corruption, real or perceived. But what if the very thought of heresy, the fleeting moments of doubt or fear, could expose a person to the warp's influence? What if the whispers in a mortal's mind, the doubts they have about the Emperor, their fear of what might lie ahead, or their desire for a different life, could be enough to draw the attention of a demon? If demons are not just confined to their realms, but are actively attuned to the thoughts of mortals, even the simplest of emotions could be enough to attract their attention. The Warhammer 40K universe is a place where the slightest imperfection, even a passing thought of rebellion, could be fatal, and the idea that these imperfections are not even private makes the situation even more dire. Fan theories surrounding this topic often focus on how vulnerable the Imperium is, not just to external threats, but to the psychological warfare being waged by the forces of chaos. The idea that demons can listen in on mortal thoughts would completely change the nature of the Imperium's enemies. In many ways, the Imperium's fight against chaos isn't just a war of steel and blood. It's a battle for the very sanctity of the mind. The connection between the warp and mortal thoughts would mean that the Chaos Gods are not just influencing the material world. They are influencing the very hearts and minds of the Imperium's citizens, guiding them toward corruption, rebellion, and eventual destruction. The sheer scope of this manipulation would be terrifying. No longer would the Emperor's light be enough to ward off the influence of chaos. Demons could, theoretically, be influencing the thoughts of even the most devout and loyal citizens of the Imperium, leading them toward acts of heresy without them even realizing it. In particular, the most vulnerable to this kind of mental manipulation would be the Psykers. The Imperium's reliance on Psykers is both a strength and a weakness. The Adeptus Astra Telepathica is essential for communication across the vast distances of the galaxy, but it also serves as a gateway for the warp to reach into the material world. Many fans speculate that the reason Psykers are so vulnerable to possession and corruption is because of their innate connection to the warp. Their minds are like an open door, an invitation for demons to enter and take control. But what if it's more than that? What if the very act of psychic communication, whether it's through the Astronomican or telepathic links between Imperial Psykers, is something that demons can exploit? The Imperium's dependence on Psykers, while necessary, could also be its undoing if the forces of chaos can manipulate these Psykers' thoughts or use them as conduits for their will. Demons could easily infiltrate the minds of those who use psychic power, whispering dark thoughts, sowing discord, and guiding them toward actions that serve the will of chaos. The implications of demons hearing thoughts are far-reaching in the context of the Astra Militarum as well. The Imperial Guard is the backbone of the Imperium's military strength, and its soldiers are taught from the moment they are conscripted that fear is the enemy. Soldiers must maintain discipline, stay focused, and fight through the terror of battle. But what if even the most well-trained soldiers are susceptible to the whispers of demons? What if their minds, vulnerable in the heat of battle, could be influenced by the forces of chaos, even in the midst of war? The very concept of morale, a critical factor in the effectiveness of any military force, becomes a terrifying variable when considering the potential for demonic influence. A soldier's thoughts might not be their own. Every doubt, every fear, every moment of hesitation could be amplified by the forces of chaos, causing soldiers to falter, panic, or even turn on their comrades. One fan theory that stands out is the idea that the Imperium's obsession with controlling its citizens' thoughts and emotions is a direct response to the knowledge that the warp is always watching. It's not just the threat of heresy that the Emperor's servants are concerned about. It's the fear that a single unguarded thought could bring the wrath of chaos down upon them. In this sense, the Imperium's authoritarianism, Its rigid structure and its totalitarian control over its citizens might not be just about maintaining order. It could also be about preventing the warp from seeping in, to stop the Chaos Gods from influencing even the most innocent thoughts of its citizens. The Emperor's own psychic power, which binds the Imperium together and holds back the forces of chaos, could be seen as a massive psychic shield keeping the demons at bay. But the question then becomes, how strong is that shield? And what happens if, over time, the shield begins to weaken, if the demons begin to find cracks in the Imperium's defenses? It's possible that the true nature of the Imperium's struggle against chaos is not just a battle of arms, but a psychological war for the very minds of its people. The very fabric of imperial society, its religious dogma, its strict hierarchies, and its unyielding faith in the Emperor could be a direct reaction to the influence of the warp. The Imperium might not just be a place where military strength reigns supreme. It could be a society on the edge of collapse, constantly fighting not only against the forces of chaos outside, but against the insidious influence of chaos within. The implications of demons hearing our thoughts reach into every corner of the Imperium. From the highest ranks of the Adeptus Astartes to the lowest ranks of the Imperial Guard, no one is truly safe from the whispering influence of the warp. If demons can access mortal thoughts, it means that no thought, no desire, no fear is private. The very idea of secrecy, of personal, unspoken fears, desires, and doubts becomes meaningless in the face of such an all-encompassing threat. And it means that the Imperium's fight against chaos is not just a matter of keeping the forces of darkness at bay. It's about protecting the very integrity of the mortal mind itself. In a universe where even your thoughts could betray you, true freedom becomes an illusion, and the fight for survival takes on a whole new, terrifying dimension. As we bring this exploration to a close, the question of whether demons can truly hear our thoughts opens up a chilling array of possibilities. The warp, with its dark, unfathomable depths, is more than just a chaotic backdrop in the Warhammer 40K universe. It is a living, breathing realm, pulsating with psychic energy that is shaped by the emotions and desires of every sentient being. And in this vast, turbulent sea, demons exist as both manifestations of the Chaos Gods and as predators that feed off the very psychic energy that flows through the warp. They are, in essence, born of our thoughts, our fears, and our desires, and perhaps that connection goes deeper than we have ever imagined. Throughout this discussion, we've explored the nature of the warp itself, its connection to mortal minds, and the chilling potential for demons to access our thoughts. Theories abound on how demons might not simply passively listen to our minds, but actively manipulate them, feeding off emotions, amplifying desires, and twisting the very fabric of our psyche. The more we dive into this concept, the clearer it becomes that the demon's relationship with our thoughts is far more complex and terrifying than we might have ever realized. Whether through the amplification of emotions, the subtle planting of thoughts, or the outright manipulation of minds, the warp and its inhabitants have a terrifying influence on our mental landscape. But what does this mean for us, as fans and as part of the Warhammer 40K universe? The idea that demons could hear our thoughts isn't just a concept confined to the pages of the lore. It's a reflection of the fragility of the human mind in the face of such overwhelming and uncontrollable forces. We live in a world where our thoughts, desires, and emotions can be shaped by forces beyond our control, and the very essence of our being is susceptible to being manipulated, twisted, and corrupted by powers far darker than we can comprehend. The Imperium, with all its rigid structures and unwavering faith, is not immune to this threat. In fact, it's a society built on the foundation of guarding against the very mental influence of chaos. If Daemons can hear our thoughts, it means that no one, not even the most devout Imperial citizen, is truly safe. The battle against chaos is not just one of weapons and armies, but a fight for the sanctity of the mind itself. As we reflect on all the possibilities presented in this video, one thing becomes clear. The warp is not just a distant, abstract force. It is intimately connected to every thought, every desire, every fear. The very nature of being alive in the Warhammer 40K universe means that our minds are never truly private. If demons can hear our thoughts, if they can influence our deepest fears and desires, then the conflict with chaos takes on an entirely new dimension. It's no longer just a battle for territory or resources. It's a battle for the soul, for the very sanctity of our inner worlds. And the more we consider this, the more we realize that the true horror of the warp lies not just in its monstrous entities, but in its ability to invade our most private spaces, our minds. It's easy to become fixated on the external forces of chaos, the titanic battles, the horrifying demonic entities, the gods that manipulate entire civilizations. But the truth is, the most insidious threat comes from within. The mind, a powerful and often misunderstood tool, is just as much a battlefield as the material world. And if Daemons are capable of reaching into the depths of our minds, the battle becomes one that we can't even begin to see. It's not just about physical strength, military might, or even faith. It's about the willpower to resist the whispers, the subtle influences, and the overwhelming force of the warp itself. So, what does this mean for the future? It means that the fight against chaos, the fight for the Imperium's survival, is far from over. The forces of the warp will continue to probe our minds, searching for weaknesses, vulnerabilities, and opportunities to corrupt. But the beauty of Warhammer 40K lies in its complexity, in the endless layers of storytelling, and in the myriad ways in which we can interpret the events that unfold. Whether we're thinking about the nature of demons, the implications of psychic powers, or the vulnerability of mortal minds, there's always more to uncover. As fans, we are constantly reinterpreting the lore, expanding on these ideas, and speculating about what could be next. And so, as we close this chapter, I urge you to keep pondering the dark mysteries of the warp. What is the true extent of the demon's influence on our thoughts? How does the Imperium, with its vast empire of knowledge and power, continue to battle against the psychic horrors that threaten to unravel it from within? These questions, though unsettling, are what make Warhammer 40K such a captivating universe to explore. The potential for discovery, the depth of speculation, and the terrifying realities of living in a galaxy so deeply intertwined with the warp are what keep us coming back again and again. If you've enjoyed exploring these dark questions with me, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button. There's much more to uncover, much more to explore, and together we can continue to dive deep into the unknown. The warp is vast, and its secrets are endless. Stay tuned for more, and remember, in the world of Warhammer 40K, nothing is ever as simple as it seems.